Professional sports, college sports, a lot of fun stuff going on here in the Pikes Peak region. Carson Field, Hugh Johnson. We have another edition of the podcast here. Hugh, how are you doing?
Doing well, Carson. How are you doing this week?
I'm good. I'm good. It's glad to be in here another week. Glad to see your face on this podcast again. So this is our Switchbacks FC expert. Hugh does a great job covering them. So Hugh, it's a very big year for the Switchbacks. They won their first playoff game 3-0, going to the second round now. Just what were your takeaways from the win over Rio Grande Valley FC?
Big year and a big week for the Switchbacks fans and their team. From this past game, I really like what we're seeing on defense in terms of from the Switchbacks, in terms of just not a lot of opportunities getting through. Rio Grande Valley did not pressure that back line nearly enough, and then when they did, they were easily, thwarted. Some late additions, I think, are really key here. They get Sebastian Anderson, and Michael Edwards on loan from Colorado Rapids. They were there with the team last year. I think those additions on top of getting Macaulay King back have really helped to shore up that defense, and they're looking really good. Another thing I took away, man, this team is very angry. Like, they feel disrespected. They feel slept on. You hear it in the quotes. You hear it in the social media. We had one player tweeting the USL Championship pundits after the game, just going, shh. So they feel disrespected. There's a lot of swag, a lot of energy around the Switchbacks right now. I think it's all coming together for them at the right time.
You mentioned the defense. In addition to some of these new players they've added to the squad, what else has helped them improve in that side of the ball?
Honestly, I think it's just getting healthy. Like I said, Macaulay King, he was out for the majority of the season. They got their midfielder back, Zach Zandy. He's been contributing as well. I think it's just helped them to finally get a little breather. They had a tough schedule in the summer. I mean, I think they went through June 23rd, beginning on March 12th is when the season began, to June 23rd, they went 11-2. They finished the season 17-13-4. So doing some quick math, that second half of the season stretch, they went 6-11-4.
Wow.
So that's like a kind of a night and day season.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of that is attributed to a rough schedule for them where they didn't get much time to rest and heal. Now it's one game a week. They're getting key players back. Things are starting to settle down. And again, with that swagger thing, they're starting to look like that team we saw back in March, April, and May.
If you look at this week's opponent, Sacramento FC, obviously any team that makes it this far in the playoffs is good. What kind of challenges do they present?
Like I said before, Rio Grande Valley didn't pressure the Switchbacks back line much. I think Sacramento is going to come in and try and do that, score early. I mean, I know that's kind of an obvious talking point, but still, got to get pressure early. I think they're going to try and do that. They did that against San Diego Loyola in their regular season finale. That secured the home playoff game that Sacramento just won. The last time the Switchbacks and Sacramento played back in August, it was a 3-0 Sacramento victory. They scored, I think their top scorer, Malik Foster, scored in the 12th minute for them. So they're going to look to get on top early in this one. Another thing is they're not going to be fazed by the environment. This is the team that they were finalists in the Lamar Hunt Open Cup, which is like clubs from USL Championship, from MLS, all over. And they beat MLS teams, they beat, USL teams, they beat a lot of teams to get to that, runner-up finish. So they're not going to be fazed, this club right here, by coming into Colorado Springs, I think, at the very least.
And then, Hugh, I'm just going to put you on the spot right here. Are the Switchbacks going to win, move on to round 3?
Yeah, I think they will. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from the team. Like I said, the swagger, the energy feels like it did at the beginning of the season. I think they're kind of hitting their stride. Last time they played Sacramento at Wagner Field, July 1st. It was a 3-0 Switchbacks victory. That came off a brace or 2 goals for Haji Berry. I think Mishi Galina is going to show up big in this one. He's got the speed. He's got the talent. That's who I'd go for. And again, I look for the defense to have a little bit more of a challenge, but also pull it through as well.
And Hugh, you're not going to be there. Who is covering the game for us?
Yeah, I got a family wedding to go to, so I'll be missing this one. You're going to want to follow our sports editor, who you're going to be speaking with in a second here. Yep. Brent Briggeman. That's at Brent Briggeman. I think it's Briggeman. On Twitter, and he's going to have all the updates for the Switchbacks. That's going to be Saturday against Sacramento Republic FC, 6 p.m. Mountain.
some awesome soccer insight right there from Hugh Johnson. He does a great job on the Switchbacks beat. But now let's talk a little bit about college sports. Obviously, college hockey. There's a big series this week. Colorado College Air Force won game at CC, won at Air Force. I'm excited to cover that one, Brent. What do you just want to know about our two local hockey teams?
Well, first of all, back to the soccer. I will be covering that game Saturday.
Oh, I forgot that.
He will be out of town, so I get to. It'll actually be my first live look at the Switchbacks. I covered a few games remotely during the pandemic, but this will be my first.
Oh, it's fun.
First time. I've never even been to a game, so I'm excited to get down there.
Widener is awesome. They have great fan support. I covered a game for Hugh when he wasn't able to make it in August, and I had a lot of fun there. So I think you'll have a good time. Playoff atmosphere should be really buzzing too.
Yeah. Well, and before that, on Thursday night, CC and Air Force women's soccer play there. So
yes, that'll be
really
very interesting.
Fun week in terms of just a playoff matchup.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about it in a second. But then two locals playing down here downtown, just mixing things up this week. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
It's a big week for CC versus Air Force too. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty interesting. Having CC, I mean, that's their two Division I sports they have as a program. It's kind of cool to see them play against their crosstown rival in the same week.
So. Yeah. So before we get into the hockey, where are the teams coming from? You know, before they meet up this weekend.
Yeah.
What happened last weekend and kind of the trajectory? Give me the overview.
Yeah, so I was at Air Force on Thursday and Friday. They played their first conference series of the year against RIT, and that's a really good team, one of the better ones in the AHA. And they split the series, won Thursday, but lost on Friday and Thursday. Best player on the ice was Guy Blessing. He won the Atlantic Hockey Association's goaltender of the week. He was phenomenal in that game. He was big, and obviously they got some good support. They had a very injured and very thin defensive core, but they actually stepped in and did a really good job limiting some shots, getting a lot of blocks. So they kind of held the Tigers in check, got some big goals when they needed them, and held on to a lead. That was something they had really struggled with coming into that game, but they held a 3-2 lead at the end of the second period, and they were able to hold on to that, so a big win. Game 2 wasn't as favorable. The defense kind of, like we talked about, it played up on Thursday. It really didn't on Friday. Coach Frank Saratori said he wanted to see more physicality out of the team, and that was something I saw too. They weren't really finishing checks. There were some turnovers, and it was, I mean, Guy Blessing had a really good game that game too. I mean, I think he made 37 saves.
Oh, geez.
But when RIT fires 41 shots, no matter how good your goalie is, there are going to be some goals in there.
Well, how much of that is the offense not keeping the goal or keeping the puck in their zone?
I think that was definitely part of it too. I mean, they didn't really get it clicking until the end of the second period. Willie Ryan made a really big hit, and that got the intensity going. They got a couple goals after that, but at that point they were down 3-2. It's hard to come back from that. So it was a little too late at that point, but they didn't really have the same flow that they had on Thursday night.
Okay. And then what about CC? I know they were on the road at your alma mater, right?
Yeah. They went to Arizona State for a 2-game series there, and they lost both of those games. Game 1 was very close, though. They got down early, but clawed back into it, trailing 3-4 for most of the third period. But the Sun Devils were able to score an empty net goal, put them away. So that was 5-3, a pretty close game, though, and I actually felt like CC played well. Game 2 was 6-1. CC didn't play as well defensively. There were just some lapses, and ASU really took control on power plays. I think they went 3 for 4. So obviously hard to neutralize when the power play is playing that well. And I don't know if that was necessarily unexpected, though, because Arizona State is a very good team this year. Maybe I'm just biased as an alum, but they're receiving votes in the rankings. That's a program that's steadily gotten better over its, I think, 7-year existence. So I think they were hoping to get at least one there, but it's not like that's some tragic result there at the same time.
Yeah. I know there was a lot of kind of some optimism for CC at the beginning because they had a rough stretch of multiple years. Where does that stand now? Has it kind of been quelled?
It's hard to say because those 2 wins against Anchorage look a little bit less impressive now. Anchorage, I think, has a -14 goal differential this year, which that's not great. But like I said, I don't think the Arizona State series was necessarily a must-win. That's a hard team. I think the St. Lawrence series the weekend before, they lost both of those games. Those were probably more winnable, but it was the first road trip for freshmen. It just didn't go their way. They didn't get a lot of the bounces from what Coach Mayotte said, but I think there's still a lot of hope. And just judging from what they did in the scrimmage, obviously you can't take too much from a scrimmage, but they did beat Air Force in the scrimmage. That should give them at least a little bit of confidence, I think, going into this weekend.
And so, okay, so Air Force CC play this weekend. I believe it's Friday night at CC.
Yes.
Saturday night at Air Force. who has the most riding on this? You know,
it's hard to say. I'd say CC's in bigger need of a win. They just want to get out of this losing spell because it's been 4 in a row now. They like we talked about, they had this optimism after sweeping UAA to start the year. They just need to get back rolling, make sure they stay positive. Obviously, we talked about this before getting on the air. It's so early in the year. It's not panic mode yet. But if they lose 2 more, it will be easy for them to go into panic mode. So they need to steal at least 1 win, I think.
Okay. And do you think Air Force, I mean, you saw them against each other in the scrimmage. Like you said, it was just a scrimmage exhibition.
It's hard to say.
You know, how are Air Force chances?
I think their chances are pretty good. Like we talked about, there are players on both teams rotating in and out of that one. They are still a little thin defensively. Mitchell Digby on the defense, one of the starters, is coming back, but they're still going to be without 2 skaters on that end of the ice. So they'll still be a little short-staffed, but if they can play as physical as they can, they have the size. They're a really big team, very experienced as far as its forwards. So I think it'll be interesting to see which Air Force team comes out, because it's been 2 different teams this year. You see a team that tied against Notre Dame, beat Lindenwood, and beat RIT, and then you see this team that has collapsed multiple games, didn't really show until the second period against RIT. So it's hard to really gauge this team, but I feel like that's pretty standard for Air Force hockey over the years.
Yeah, and I covered the series last year at both places, and I will say the energy was electric. I don't go to every hockey game, but yeah. I do love that these teams play. Oh, they don't have to. You look at football, it had been 50 years almost before Air Force and CU had played. And that's different in this, we're in the same town, but they don't have to play. So I think it is nice that they do.
No, there's so much stakes in this game too, just between that crosstown rivalry. I think there is a lot more respect in this rivalry than a lot of other rivalries in college sport. But at the same time, I think these teams, Air Force hasn't won the trophy since 2018. They're itching to get it back at the Academy. CC swept in 2018, won 1 game in 2020, and then split last year, so it stayed over at Robeson. But Air Force, they're hungry. I talked to Sarah Torrey yesterday at his press conference, and he knows how much of a prideful thing it is to win that series. And obviously it's the same for CC. So,
okay. Anything specifically you're looking for out of this one?
I want to see if Guy Blessing can continue to do what he's doing for Air Force. He has just been incredible so far. Like I already told you, but he's been amazing as a sophomore, gotten better each game he's been on the ice. His defense just has to help him out, because if you allow 40 shots, some of those are going to go in.
Yeah, so. And I would think that was not a given. He was the goalie going in, but he'd only played sparingly last year.
I think he played 7 games last year.
He behind a great senior. So.
Yeah, he was not the leader in the clubhouse, but he has been amazing so far. So if he keeps it going, I think he can really help out his team.
Okay. Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. And it's the bye week for football. How is that treating you so far? Obviously, there's really no days off as the sports editor here at the Gazette, but any off time?
No, no, not really. But it works out nicely, because Saturday we got state cross country here in high schools hosted in the city, so I'll be able to go out to that. And then with you going out of town, I'll be able to catch some soccer. So I will keep myself plenty occupied.
Yeah,
things are a little less cumbersome without stories, nice. But I think everybody needed a little breather.
No, for sure.
I think Air Force football. I'm sure we can't watch practice anymore, but I'm sure they've been intense practices. But again, I think even there, just mentally to be able to step back and not have a game to prepare for, turn the focus inward. I think this was a team that needed that just chance to collect themselves a little bit after a rough stretch.
I agree. Most recently of that rough stretch, a 19-14 loss against Boise State. But what really doomed the Falcons was their start. You said they had negative yardage after the first 4 drives. That's unheard of. Just what was going wrong at the beginning of that game?
It was just sloppy execution. It was, drop pitches, a fumble they lost on a 3rd down. Air Force getting themselves at 2nd and 13, 2nd and 14 is not a formula that they can handle with this particular group, and especially against Boise State's defense. Yeah. So it was just they always generally, we've seen them establish the run early, get things going, and when you're punting, when you're going 3 and out 4 times in a row, and again negative 4 yards through 4 possessions, that is not establishing anything.
No.
So they finally got a big pass play on, I think, their 5th series, and then they finally got it going, but it was 20 just dreadful minutes, and it was 16-0. The fact that they stayed in the game was remarkable.
That is pretty impressive.
The defense gave up a touchdown on, I think, Boise State's 2nd drive, And then after that, it became a bend, don't break, and then just basically don't give up anything.
Right.
Because they did give up 4 field goals, but they were containing Boise State enough that the offense had a chance to come back. So the defense really picked it up. The offense was just so slow in getting going. And, we've just seen this week after week, when other teams can stop the run, or when Air Force is shooting itself in the foot on the run, there's just not that second level. I looked it up. I looked up some passing numbers, and it's been a long time. There's not a specific sweet spot where Air Force needs to be passing, because they've had success both ways. But there was about a 10-year stretch from 2010 to 2019 where they averaged over 100 yards passing a game. And now this is the third year in a row they've been under 95. And, that coincides with Hazik Daniels being the quarterback. So, it's just gearing the offense toward the skill set. But when that's the skill set and suddenly the running game is contained, it just gets really difficult. So it turned out to be an entertaining game. Air Force had a drive that could have won the game. They looked like they converted a 4th down, but a holding penalty brought it back, and then they were stopped. But to lose 19-14, having the ball deep in Boise State's territory, it was, most days you would take that, but then you see the first 20 minutes, you're like, whoa, this maybe shouldn't have even been.
Exactly.
If Air Force shows up and plays like themselves, they win that game. But we've said that so many times now.
Yeah.
They've lost 3 games. It's not panic.
Sure.
They're 5-3, but they've been favored every one of those games. And when you really look at it, they've had a chance to win every one of those games. And, so it's one of those seasons that, if you came in with no expectations, or if you were getting blown out, you'd say, hey, we're 5-3. That's where we should be. But I don't think anybody would look at this team in these games and say that they're happy with where they are.
I agree. We've talked time and time again about how weird the Mountain West is. That's all of a sudden looking like Boise's the front runner to win the conference. Do you think there's a chance for whoever wins the Mountain West to appear in a New Year's Six game this year?
It's going to depend on what happens in other conferences, but it's going to be a really long shot. Because if Boise does emerge as a champion, they had such a rough, those 2 losses, to Oregon State and UTEP, that are going to be hard to overcome, especially if they get another loss in there. And I just don't know that there's another team that's good enough to step up and be the highest ranked team. So it's going to depend on Boise finishing really strong. Maybe that gets it done, but
there are some strong teams ahead of them, like Cincinnati. James Madison's been really good this year. So it would be hard, I feel like. But with how Boise's playing, you never know.
Yeah, no, they've got it going at the right time. So they win the conference, finish, it would be 11-2 at that point. Maybe,
possibly.
But I just don't think this has been the year for the Mountain West. It could set up for an exciting finish.
For sure.
I think Air Force is out of that now with 3 losses. I think they would be, every single domino would have to fall in their way. And so basically Air Force has played itself out of that race, but I still think the race itself could be fun. And it's going to be fun to see what Colorado State does. They've steadily improved.
Yeah, they have.
They're
2-1 in Mountain West play.
Yeah, so they are no longer, one you can look past. So there's a lot of interesting things going on, but from Air Force's perspective, which is my perspective, because that's the team I see play every week, it's been a disappointing season so far. 8 games in. But again, 10-3, which they could still achieve, that looks pretty good. That's about as good as Air Force has been under Troy Calhoun. They had the 11-2. So they haven't played themselves out of relevance or historical. This isn't a bad team.
No, sure.
It's not a great team. And I
think the expectations were so much higher.
The cards were set up with the returning players at the spots and the overall talent on the defense, defense has been great.
Yeah.
Or good, very good. Obviously Utah State showed some things, but it's just when you look at all the pieces they had and then to not be able to put it together. And it's just really been the lack of the explosive plays, and injuries have played a part of that. We still haven't seen Dane Kinnaman back, and that was a position that was thinned from graduation. So there's a lot of excuses there for the taking, but bottom line is it's been a disappointing season.
No, for sure. But without us having a game to preview this week, let's have a little bit of fun with it. You've been to almost all of the Mountain West cities as someone on this beat. Yeah. I've been to a lot of them just traveling or covering games for other teams. So let's have some fun. Let's do a little bit of a fantasy draft, 4 cities each alternating as far as the Mountain West goes. Brent, let's start it out.
I'm taking Boise.
Boise? Okay.
I love that city. It's just so, the downtown has so many fun bars. And I'm probably biased because I have friends who live in Oregon, and a lot of times they come over and have a weekend while we're there. And It's just a beautiful city.
Yeah.
Great hiking around town and a nice little river walk type thing. I took my family there. They had a good museum we went to, and they have awesome, like a downtown playing structure, but just the variety of local restaurants and bars and beers. And
Nice.
I love that town. Plus, I think there's a big differentiation here because this conference has some college towns.
Yes.
And then it has some cities.
Yes,
you know,
it does.
like obviously Vegas, San Diego, Honolulu, you know, there are some big cities,
Right.
San Jose even, but so you kind of have a preference there.
Sure.
My preference is the college town
Yeah.
feel. And Boise, you go everywhere in town, someone's wearing Boise State
Nice.
something. So they really embrace that school. They have that one common cause, and it's just fun. You don't eat at chain restaurants when you go to Boise. 'Cause
Sure.
they have so many options.
No, I've been to Idaho, but never Boise, but I've heard great things. So I think that's a good pick. I'm going to go with one of those cities that you mentioned, San Diego. I visited there several times and just love it. There's so much to do. The weather's almost always nice and it's beautiful. I actually covered a game at old SDCCU Stadium back when San Diego State used to play there, when I covered Arizona State in college. And now they have a new stadium, though. I've heard great things about the new place, so it would be interesting to go back there one day. But like I said, love San Diego. I've been to Petco Park. Beautiful place to watch a baseball game. So I'm going to stick with the city for my number one.
Yeah, it was wise that they got rid of that stadium.
Oh my gosh. It was a dump.
It
really
was. I mean, I've been several games there, and every time I leave more and more underwhelmed. So
Yeah.
it will be so fun to see something more appropriate to the school.
It's weird because it looks like a much smaller stadium than what Qualcomm was, but it looks so nice. It almost looks like an MLS stadium. It's built more like a soccer stadium, but I think it looks beautiful. I'd love to check it out sometime.
Yeah, and I hope it'll be fun to see if the fans embrace it, because you go to Viejas for basketball. I don't know if you've ever been there. That place that's Power 5, D1. Like it has few equivalents. And I went to Kansas. Like, I'm not saying it's Allen Fieldhouse, but it is the Allen Fieldhouse of the Mountain West without question. I mean, it is a very difficult place to play because it also matches with their style, defensive, grinded out type games with a crowd that's just relentless. So it all feeds into the same thing. But it's such a great city.
Yeah, it is.
And that is now, with the Chargers gone, like it's becoming more and more. This is the thing you have there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think it's there for the taking, and it's good. That's a good pick. All right, so go to me. I'm gonna just leave Colorado Springs out of this.
Oh,
because,
okay.
At least for me, because obviously, I choose to live here.
Yeah, you lived here for so long now.
Yeah, so I mean, if you had to say straight up, where do you want to live? Colorado Springs, number one. But I'm going to take that out. I'm going to go with a surprise pick here. I'm going to go with. You're going to laugh at this one. I'm going to go with Reno, Nevada.
Okay, I don't hate that. I've been to Reno. I don't love Reno, but I love the area. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful area. Again, great hiking and things like that. And if you really look around, there are some cool bars and some cool just things to do. Plus, you have the whole casino scene and all of that. And if you just want to go to a nice little hotel in a nice suburb, you can go over to Sparks. But I really enjoy my time when I go to Reno.
Nice.
And, I think it's kind of a hidden gem. It's got a beautiful area, again, with a river and just some cool coffee places. And it's just kind of that vibe. It's got its own scene, that you don't get in, say, Albuquerque or something like that. So I'm going to go with Reno.
I don't hate that pick. We did a trip as a family to Tahoe when I was like 15. So I obviously don't really know the casino bar scene too well. But I thought it was a beautiful area. I don't hate that pick. It probably wouldn't be my number two, but I like the pick. My number two, I think I'm going to go Fort Collins, Colorado. I think it's a fun town, a lot of fun bars, coffee shops. It's a nice place. I'm from Austin, and that town has a lot of similarities, obviously on a much smaller scale to Austin, but it's beautiful. I'm a big mountain guy, and it's right on the mountain, so I think that's really cool. Never been out to a Colorado State game, but I'd love to sometime, and just really fun town every time I've been.
Yeah, I feel like as long as I've lived here and as many games as I've covered there, I haven't experienced it the way I've experienced the other ones because I never stay. It's always in the afternoon.
It's so close that I don't blame you.
Yeah, so I've never really gotten to soak it all in. It is a beautiful stadium, beautiful campus. I mean, my daughters are still way too young to be thinking about colleges, but they're at that age, they want to be engineers or vets.
Nice.
And that's a great school for both. So we've walked around and just kind of gotten a look at it, and the good restaurants. Yeah, it checks every box. There's no doubt about it. But it gets a little bigger than some of the other college towns, and But no, I'm not going to take any away from Fort Collins. Great city.
All right, what's pick 3, Brent?
I'm going to go with San Jose.
Okay.
It is one of those
Okay.
cities, and I said I prefer the college town, but within the downtown, it has a very small vibe to it. And again, it's all, one of those places very walkable once you get to that area, from the stadium even down to tons of restaurants and bars, and has a really old school feel. Like it's not the nicest city from an infrastructure standpoint, although obviously there's a ton of money there, and I'm sure as you get to the suburbs, you find that. But it's just a quaint almost place. I don't know. I've enjoyed my time in San Jose, and even though the games have never been good, the basketball team draws nobody. The football team, I just haven't really experienced a good game there.
Sure.
They've done a lot of work to that stadium, so now I think there's a little more interest and whatnot. But when I've been there, it's kind of been a, why is this team in the conference? And I think they've overcome some of that. But just being in the city, I can always find good sushi restaurants.
Okay, there you go.
Like that. So I really like San Jose.
Okay, I haven't spent much time there. I think I had a layover there once, but that doesn't really count. 3, you're going to laugh at me for my pick, Laramie, Wyoming. I got to pay some homage to Wyoming. I loved my time there. My first job out of college was fun. Granted, my town I lived in Wyoming was like 5 hours away from Laramie, but I went down there a couple times, and it is a fun place. Good bar scene, a lot to do. Very pretty ladies down there. It's a good place. There's a lot of nature stuff too. So I'm a big fan of Laramie. The Pokes are up and down. They got the win over Air Force, a great home field advantage there. So I'm a big fan of Laramie, Wyoming. I know you're not, but
yeah. Again, everything we see it all through our own lens. And I've just, every time I've been there, for the most part, weather's been terrible. Windy,
that's a factor.
Cold, just driven through so many snowstorms getting there and back. And I've just encountered some of the wrong type of aggression from people, totally unprovoked. It's like, what is going on?
Oh, the rivalry is very real there.
Not even that, just encountering people who are just looking to throw down. And it's like, what are you? I'm just trying to pick up a to-go meal. It's just a different town.
It is.
And I just don't think it's my speed. Although, I grew up in rural Kansas. It's not like I'm too big time for Laramie, but sure. It's just, I don't know.
Interesting.
I have not enjoyed my time in Laramie.
Well, fair enough. Brent, what's your last pick?
All right. This is a tough one because we got 2 pretty cool cities to choose from. The other college town still would be Logan, but I'm not gonna go Logan. I'm gonna go with the easy one, the obvious one, Vegas.
Yeah.
It's, Las Vegas is how can you not have a good time in Las Vegas?
Oh, absolutely.
And, when you're talking about road trips, when you're going there to cover a game, that's the place you call around and see if anyone's free that weekend and wants to join you. You don't do that when you're going to Logan, Utah, or
Fresno, California.
But Vegas is just, it's such a unique animal in every respect, but it's a fun place. It doesn't really embrace UNLV, especially on the football side. Basketball is another one of those where it gives Viejas certainly a run for its money when they're good, but it's just a fun city. Everything you could want is in Vegas. And everything you shouldn't want is also in Vegas.
Vegas, another place that I went to when I was under 21. So I need to go down there sometime, lose some money. I like that pick, though. That's a good number 4. My 4th one, this is tough. I'm going to go another city, Honolulu. I've been to Hawaii. And while Honolulu might not be like the ideal area of Hawaii, it's still Hawaii. It's right close to the beach. They kind of have some stadium dilemmas just with building a stadium in Hawaii. They played at Aloha for so many years, but it's hard to argue with living in Hawaii if you're a college student. I feel like that would be pretty awesome. Can't say the road trips traveling to the States for every road game. I don't think that would be too fun, but living on the coast, living in Hawaii, I imagine that would be pretty fun. I've had a bunch of fun every time I've been to Hawaii, so I'll go with that for number 4.
Okay, well, I lived in Maui for 2 years.
Oh, that's right. You did tell me that.
So we went over to Honolulu a few times. I've never been on the beach just because the games have always started so late here for the newspaper deadline that it just hasn't been worth the investment to go. But I have been in the city. But again, when you're coming from Maui, which is like
Maui's amazing, and
it's a paradise. It is the best place in the United States, the best place in the world, in my opinion. And then you go over to Honolulu, and it feels a little more like you're on a city.
It does. It feels more like Florida to me.
Yeah, or LA. Yeah. So I have a hard time really loving it, but you're still in Hawaii.
Yeah.
The North Shore is still drivable. Waikiki is still Waikiki. Yep. It's still a vibe, like I said about the other places. So I like the pick. If I had to choose Honolulu, Vegas, I'm taking Vegas just because.
That's fair. That's fair. So let's look at the ones we didn't talk about. Colorado Springs, obviously, we both ruled that one out. Just living here, we kind of have some bias. So we didn't hit Fresno, not really surprising, Logan or Albuquerque. I personally like Albuquerque. I thought about it, but I mean, it's not Hawaii at the same time.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Breaking Bad. But no, I'm never miserable with Albuquerque, but that would never be on my.
No,
I'd never
I
go to
agree.
Albuquerque
Just to go to
purpose.
Albuquerque. Yeah, I'd ski in New Mexico, but I wouldn't say I'm taking a trip solely to Albuquerque. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
But
And yeah, good teams. Another great place to play with the Pit.
yeah,
You know, Jeff Grammer, the writer down there, is as good as it gets in,
Nice.
in the country. A lot of good things about that place, but just, you know, again, there's nothing that stands out to me as
For
an
sure.
occasional visitor that draws me in.
No, for sure. For sure. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening to me and Brent ramble about our favorite towns in the Mountain West. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit of something about hockey, switchbacks, football, you name it. But this has been fun, guys. Thanks for tuning in.